Hello everybody, welcome back to part 2 of What If All the Dragon Ball Sagas Happened at the Same Time. I just want to quickly thank everybody for supporting part 1. I got so much support for this series, so apparently y'all like it, and I really appreciate that. Alright, let's get right into part 2. We left off with Goku facing King Cold and Mecha Frieza after returning to Earth from planet Yardrat. Goku gets hit with Deja Vu, but this time he has a feeling it's not going to be nearly as climactic. Frieza, tired of waiting, rushes at Goku with full strength, but Goku's not going to play around with him in base form. Goku explodes with power, and immediately grabs the hands Frieza was going to punch him with. Goku then smiles and proceeds to absolutely batter Frieza, embarrassing him with combo after combo. King Cold tries to get Goku off of his son, but Goku just gives him the death stare, and punches a hole right through his chest, killing the king. Frieza fights back to his best ability, it even gets in a death beam, but Goku simply uses the back of his hand to slap the beam to the ground. Goku, a little bored of this by now, tells Frieza that he wished he trained a little bit, and grabs him before blasting off into the sky. He then tells Frieza goodbye, and throws him at full speed at the Earth. Frieza screams and crashes down into a crater. Just to make sure he's really dead this time, Goku charges a ball of ki and throws it into this crater, creating a giant explosion. Goku smiles. It seems like that's the last of Frieza. He starts to think about what he was gonna do when he gets back to Earth. Oh yeah, his wife. He should probably go see her, so Goku heads over to his house. Meanwhile, Vegeta finally gets to West City, and is shocked to see that a large chunk of the area was nothing but rubble. He begins to fly around, looking for any sign of life. That's when he passes an outlet store with a single blonde woman inside trying on clothes. He drops down and then asks the woman to explain herself. Why is she shopping here during a disaster like this? The woman turns around and glares at the prince with cold, dead eyes. This is, of course, Android 18. Turns out, after Gero was informed about the Emperors of the Universe, Frieza and King Cold, arriving on planet Earth, he was terrified. Aliens invading the planet? Well, it's not Goku, but it's as good as any time to release his new line of battle androids. So, Gero and Android 13 released 3 of his newest androids, Android 17, 18, and 16. It turns out that Android 19 was never created in this timeline, since he had Android 13 in the mix. I also think that nobody's really gonna miss him, so whatever, sorry man. So other than that, this interaction is still pretty canon. Android 17 and 18 don't really see any real reason to keep Gero alive, and end up killing the scientist. Android 13 tries to intervene, but due to him not being a battle android, he sadly joins Dr. Gero in the other world. Android 16 really has no say in the matter, since his only order is to find and kill Goku. So they split up. Android 17 and 18 head into one direction, while Android 16 heads in the other. Now, back to the fight. Android 18 smiles coldly and shoots a ki blast directly at Vegeta. He was so thrown off by the interaction that he gets hit and flies into a building. This leaves Vegeta very confused. This woman has no ki, yet just shot him with a ki blast. This can't be a human. It's time to get serious. So Vegeta powers up to Super Saiyan and charges at Android 18, plowing her through the outlet store walls. A few miles south, Piccolo and Gohan land in another part of the city that's covered in rubble. Here they find Android 17 shooting random bystanders with a barrage of ki blasts. Yeah, this guy can't be human. They can't sense his energy at all, and he's actively shooting ki blasts. Honestly, Piccolo isn't too surprised by this. He was glad that his preconceived notions were right. Turns out that Piccolo and Gohan stopped over at the lookout before landing in West City. As someone very connected to Earth's current guardian, he was hit with a horrible feeling of impending doom, and decided to meet up with Kami to discuss the merging process. Kami, who was also feeling the same impending doom, agreed and fused with Piccolo, also transferring ownership of the Dragon Balls with him. Now with that out of the way, back to West City. Even if this guy is human, he's killing people, and that's unacceptable. Gohan doesn't play with murderers, and instantly powers up to Super Saiyan. Both Z Fighters charge at Android 17 and catch him off guard, and 17 is surprised just to see how strong Gohan and Piccolo really are. Alone, he could beat Gohan and could definitely beat Piccolo without much effort, but these two have gotten especially close during the 2-year time skip from training so much, both with each other and with Vegeta. So Android 17 is kinda getting overwhelmed here. He needs to separate these two now. Gohan shoots a Masenko at him, so he uses his android shield blocking the explosion, which makes a big smoke cloud. He then uses this smoke cloud to target Piccolo. He charges in and begins his assault, eventually injuring Piccolo and sending him crashing into the ground. Gohan sees this, and he is pissed. Suddenly, his ki explodes and he charges at Android 17. 17 is very surprised at how strong Gohan is. They're basically at the same level, and he didn't really account for this. Meanwhile, Vegeta is struggling a bit against Android 18, but the gap isn't nearly as far as it was in canon. Android 18 is being forced to put in her all, but she's confident she could defeat Vegeta. Suddenly, Vegeta stops the fight and laughs to himself. Vegeta says that he didn't expect to be pushed this far, and that she's quite powerful, but too bad this isn't his full power. Behold my full power. Vegeta screams and explodes in a golden ki, and when the light fades, Vegeta appears looking much more muscular than usual. This is Super Vegeta. Vegeta actually unlocked this about a month before Frieza's arrival, but didn't show it to any of the other Z fighters. He wanted to keep this form as a trump card for Kakarot, but whatever. He'll give this woman the honor of seeing his new form. The form gives Vegeta the edge to overpower Android 18, who is shocked. This ability was never in the data she received from Gero. And with this power, Vegeta is easily able to overcome 18's barrage of attacks, as well as her bottomless stamina. He does notice his stamina issue, and decides to end it quickly before he gets too worn out, since he's already somewhat damaged. He slams Android 18 over the head, which sends her spiraling to the ground. Then, he charges a big bang attack, and launches it at the android, creating a giant blue explosion. After, he looks around for any remains, but comes up empty. Hopefully she was just vaporized by the big bang attack. Back a few miles north, Android 17 is battling Gohan. After seeing his friend getting hurt, Gohan's ki is running rampant. This isn't exactly a new form, but his power is definitely increased from the start of the fight. They clash beams and trade blows. Gohan might slightly have the edge in power, but he just can't keep up with the infinite stamina of the battle android. But hopefully he doesn't have to keep up for much longer. At this point in time, Piccolo's back up, and he's not just sitting aside idly. Gohan decides that this is the moment. After so many training sessions with Piccolo, he knows what he's going for. He charges up the rest of his ki inside of him and fires a giant Masenko right at Android 17. 17 realizes that this blast means danger, so he decides to use his android shield to block the blast, which works, but this was actually the wrong move from 17. When he was spectating, Piccolo noticed that the android has a weakness, a small time frame after the shield where he's completely vulnerable. So right when he lets go of that shield, you know what happens. The android was too locked in with the Gohan fight to notice the charging process. The blast pierces directly through the android's chest, and 17 drops from the air into the city rubble. Gohan starts to celebrate, while Piccolo is just shocked that the trick actually worked. After congregating together, they go and find Android 17's body, and to their horror, it's nowhere to be found. Both Android 17 and 18 use the city's destruction to their advantage, and escape their fight since the Z-Fighters can't really sense their ki. After scrounging around, they eventually find each other, and are surprised at each other's condition. They're both barely standing. Android 17 has a gaping hole through his chest, while Android 18 is missing her left arm. But these sad little androids are not going to be catching a break anytime soon. Someone in a nearby alleyway cackles. Wow, a 2-for-1 buffet. He really got lucky in this timeline. This is Cell. More surprisingly, the Cell from this timeline. Turns out before he died, Android 13 clicked the emergency release valve on Cell's pod, releasing him shortly after the androids left the lab. From here, he was basically free to absorb as many humans as he wanted since Frieza and the androids were making such a fuss. But there's one pretty substantial difference between this Cell and the canon Cell. There's no trace of Frieza in his DNA. This is because Cell was released, quote, prematurely in comparison to the canon timeline. In canon, Gero had 3 years after Mecha Frieza to incorporate his DNA into Cell, but that never happened here. Cell's basically just part Saiyan from Goku and Vegeta and part Namekian from Piccolo. It is possible that Gohan and Ten Shinhan's DNA were used for Cell's creation, but I'm going to say for continuity's sake that that's not the case. Gero probably thought that Tien was weak and that Gohan was just a weaker, younger version of Goku, so he didn't really use him. Since this is the case, Cell is a little bit less durable, but also less evil in general. Right now, he's not necessarily attacking the androids just because, he's attacking them to evolve. Just as an animal attacks another for sustenance, Cell is just following his biological code, and that code is telling him to become perfect. Without warning, Cell jumps and kicks Android 17 through a wall, and grabs Android 18's only available hand. She flails around, but it's really no use. Cell's base form is still stronger than her in her sorry state. Cell then enlarges the opening on the bottom of his tail and completely absorbs Android 18, becoming semi-perfect Cell. 17 gets up and is horrified by what just happened, but it's too late. Semi-perfect Cell jumps on top of him, completely overpowering the android. Shortly after, Android 17 shares the same fate as 18, and a new, perfect Cell is born into the timeline. Now, there's been a lot of timeline talk in this series, and for some reason, I'm feeling like I'm kind of forgetting somebody. Perhaps it's the most important character in the Cell saga. I'm of course talking about Trunks. Why didn't he show up earlier, and what's going on in his canon timeline? Well, find out in the next part of What If All the Dragon Ball Sagas Happened at the Same Time. Ooh, that was a good cliffhanger. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, then press like on it and subscribe to the channel just to know when part 3 drops. And trust, you're not going to want to miss part 3. It basically ties the entire series together, and it's pretty good in my opinion. You know, not that it means much, but you know. Alright, see y'all later.